U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the Golden Dome, a $175 billion missile defense shield set to guard North America from nuclear threats by 2028. With Space Force General Michael Guetlein at the helm and Canada eyeing participation, will this space-based fortress deliver unmatched protection or face insurmountable challenges? Joining us to discuss is Douglas Ernest, U.S. Army war veteran and entrepreneur, and the author of The Spirit of a True Patriot, the inspiring story of retired Captain Douglas J. Ernest. Douglas, welcome to the Richard Syrett Show. How are you?
Hey, Richard, how are you today? A pleasure to be with you this beautiful afternoon.
Great to have you here. Now, people listening on the radio can't see this, but on the YouTube channel they will. What a beautiful backdrop. Those are Corvettes in the background?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Are they yours, man?
Well, most of them belong to the bank, but, you know, we're in charge of having to pay for them.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful automobiles. All right. So let's talk about the Golden Dome. First of all, quick question. Those of us old enough to remember Ronald Reagan and his dream of a strategic defense, the Strategic Defense Initiative, nicknamed Star Wars, sort of had the same idea in mind. It didn't come to fruition. How is the Golden Dome going to be different?
You know, great backdrop to that. You know, when I was a kid, Ronald Reagan was talk about it on TV a lot about Star Wars, and it was going to, you know, be all, save all, and help take America into the next stratosphere of defense and bring us up to be the number one military in the world. But that never, like you said, it never came to fruition. The Golden Dome is a little bit different, as it's been more high profile because Israel has mastered the Golden Dome. And of course, they needed to defend themselves from the terrorists that surround this beautiful body of land in the Middle East. So they have actually mastered this missile defense system. And this missile defense system will destroy short-range rockets, artillery, long-term. It can do Scud missiles. It can do a massive amount of different prototypes and defend a body, a nation, a massive amount of land. And even something as big as North America can be defended with this type of missile defense system. You know, about a decade ago, this was developed by the Rafael Space Defense System, and it's been into place. We know it works because Israel has had it. Donald Trump talked about it in his previous administration, but they could never obtain funding. But with the funding masses, with the big, beautiful bill, and with the momentum that the Trump administration has, we're hopeful that this can get put through and we can actually get this on our budget. And finally, we know this defense system is effective because it worked for Israel. I believe that was on Operation Protective Edge. They also used it against Hezbollah with the attacks, and with several conflicts with Hamas between 20 and 24, they've actually had this impede, and they've only had a few rockets actually get through on this defense system.
How, though, will the Golden Dome address the evolving missile threats from adversaries like Russia, for example? And they have their highly celebrated, I guess, hypersonic Oreshnik missiles. These are not the Scuds or the whatever, you know, Iran was lobbing over at Israel. These are a step above, to say the least.
You know, when you talk about the Russian defense, even though we do speak about Russia, they are still not as technologically advanced as the U.S. They don't have the top technology because they don't have the funding. They've spent, you know, close to $500 billion fighting these senseless wars in their region. You know, with using this as a strategic collective defense prototype, we can find a way to deter the military aggression because our technology will be much more advanced than the Russian prototype. So it's a very, very, very modernized type of defense system. We can finally attribute the success because of what's happened in Israel. Now, you're going to say, oh, but Israel and the aggressors of Israel not as strong and technology advanced as Russia. But we're going to have, if this would get through and we would get the funding for it, the technology would supersede the Russian forces technology. And it's all about this game. You know, when you outdo your partner in bridge, you got to do another step up to advance into that gambit, if you will. It's the same thing with these missile defense systems. the country with the highest technology has the strategic advantage. And to maintain that competitive advantage, you need money. You need funding. You need the highest technology. You need to be able to take the systems that use cyber attacks and put out your your codes to make your systems launch. So once they get the technology evolved, it's 97% there. The other 3% will come when they actually get the technology and they evolve over time. And that's going to be done with massive amounts of money and increased funding by the United States government.
Can you explain how the Golden Dome will integrate, let's say, terrestrial and space-based systems, creating this multi-layered defense?
Yeah, that's a great question. Basically, as a kid, NASA had all the control of Space Force, space technology, and that's kind of been taken a back seat to the forces like Elon Musk, SpaceX, and they have the highest technology, and we've actually contracted with forces like SpaceX. These systems will integrate with these systems because of the satellite technology. When I was a kid, we didn't know what GPS technology was. When I was in Gulf War I, we learned about GPS, and we were fascinated how a phone at that time, which is about this big, would be able to navigate us through the desert. And it was just fascinating technology because when I grew up as a kid, I say a kid, when I was a 17-year-old infantryman, we got around the desert with a track and a compass and a protractor. And that's how we got around. And then right around the Gulf War, this GPS technology was implemented. And it wasn't perfect, but it still was better than the protractor and trying to find your way around the desert and using land sight, to navigate through the desert at night and look at, we were navigating with stars and the moon and where the sun would set and matching that to our map. So as this technology evolves, it ties in with the whole SpaceX. It also ties in with Starlink because all these forces will work together. Thankfully, the SpaceX and Starlink is not an adversary of the United States. It's actually an ally, and it's headquartered out of America. So we would be thankful that we have this technology and we have this relationship with the Musk and with Starlink and with SpaceX that we can integrate these systems. Now, do we have to have a defense program where we can controvert the defense system? We wouldn't want our enemy, Russia, or even an adversary militarily like China to have the same system because then they could integrate our system. So it's all about diplomatic, regional stability, and then having control of the technology and always being one step ahead of your enemy or your adversary and those that might want to hurt you.
The Congressional Budget Office suggests a cost range between 161 billion to 542 billion. Why the discrepancy? I mean, what factors contributed to such a wide range? And are we confident that it can be done for 175 billion?
It's something that's magical about the Trump administration and with the way that they have their approach and their perspective to money. There's always a budget, and most of the time, from my experience, we always went over the budget in my military endeavors. When I was an S4 brigade leader when I was a kid. I guess I was 26, 27, 28 years old, and we had this budget. You come in and say, okay, you got 12 million for this, you got 20 million for this, you got 33 million for this, and this is to buy equipment, buy tanks, buy this time satellites, equipment, and so forth. We always went over the budget. We would never, ever, ever under budget. But if you look at the budget, you would get in the budget and you'd look at some of the paperwork in there and you said, we just paid $33 for a hammer. We just paid $28 for a screwdriver. It was just such a massive waste of resources. I believe, from my perspective, and talking to my friends that are still in the military business, those that are still serving in active duty, they have taken a step to increasing the budget constraints and being able to stop squandering resources and wasting money within the government. But the Trump administration constantly pushes to do more. You tell this administration, you tell Pete Hegseth, you tell the Pentagon leaders that we're going to spend this much on defense, and they always have a pushback where they want to get a better deal. They want to get, the art of the deal, get a better price. They want to push and push and push. So these numbers that you're seeing are not set in stone. They are, an idea. We haven't even made a deal to get the system yet. We're in the talks to generate, but it's actually not complete, and it won't be complete till we get to that point. But I would gather that I would much rather have the Trump administration more so than the Biden administration making this deal, spending the government's money, spending the people's money more so than the Biden administration. So I have full faith and credit that the Trump administration will make the best decisions that are for our country and get us within budget or under budget when these systems are actually implemented and put into our systems, national defense systems.
A few words, if you might, about Canada's possible involvement in this. What strategic and maybe logistical implications would Canada's participation in Golden Dome have?
That's a great question. And I've been on hundreds of these interviews for military strategy and people trying to understand my perspective. And I've gotten on the interviews with people in Canada in the last 6 months, and I always feel this tension. And I can feel the person on the other side of the microphone telling me, well, this is going on in your country and this is going on in your country. And I'd say the tension that we feel between our two nations is so small compared to the tensions that we have around the globe. And when this is all said and done and these tensions are resolved, we're going to be better. We're going to be stronger. We're going to stop spending money. We're going to let less terrorists into our nation. Our borders will be more secure. Well, the Canada and the U.S. have the NORAD partnership, and that was the Joint Canada Command that defends the North American airspace. And I just say that because it's been going on for decades now that we've had this agreement. And we've actually had operations where the Americans fly in North Bay and Ontario. Our primary perspective of understanding what we have to do there. It's to just do missile defense, aircraft, kill these drones that come in. We just saw China infiltrate our country and yours because some of those China drones came through your country to get to ours. They came across the ocean, but they also were going through Canada. This is something that Canada will be as a partner, a strategic alliance partner in helping us eliminate these drone threats. We'll be able to do it together. We'll be able to make our country stronger, and we'll be able to work with Canada that your country will be also defended. People and around the world talk about, hitting New York, hitting LA, but what about if you hit Quebec? Wouldn't that destroy your nation, your financial infrastructure of your nation? We should all work together because we are much better united. We are much better and stronger if we're doing this together. And tensions in Canada are so minuscule compared to the tensions we have in the Middle East and those abroad that want to hurt both of our nations.
Amen to that. Douglas, give us kind of the elevator pitch for The Spirit of a True Patriot, the inspiring story of retired Captain Douglas J. Ernest.
The Spirit of a True Patriot is a book that I wrote and encapsulates my time in the military. I spent about 20 years in the military as an infantryman, as an armor officer, and then later I got out and became an entrepreneur. And I spent my whole career working my tail off. And first it was to be a soldier in the military, and later it was to be a Corvette dealer. And I grew up as a kid. My uncle was a Vietnam veteran, and he had a 1979 Corvette about 7 or 8 years when he returned from Vietnam. So I wrote up this book thinking that I was going to do it to help other people's kids that wanted to join the military, maybe answer those questions that I didn't have answers to as a kid, because I didn't know what infantry was. I didn't know what armor was when I signed that contract. I thought this was what I would be doing. And later, the book became a mantra for those that are entrepreneurs, those that want to improve their lives. The book will give you skill sets that I learned in the military, how to improve your life, how to improve the relationship with your family, how to improve your physical fitness, how to do more in a shorter period of time. I didn't make up these strategies. I didn't make up these tactics. I didn't create this specialized knowledge. It was passed down to me from my leaders and my mentors in the military that shared these things with me and told me how I could be a better person, a better father, a better contributor to my community. And I believe if you find one thing in this book that you learned, it will improve your life, and it would have been worth the $15 that you spent on it.
How do we get a copy?
If you go to CorvetteWarehouse.com, you just click on the link, meet the owner. There's a link to buy the book, and there's lots of information about us, our business, and things that you can do to help veterans charities that are desperately in need of your money and your resources to help those that are less fortunate.
CorvetteWarehouse.com. I'm going to go on there right after the show. I want to look at more of those cars.
Go ahead and take a look, and it's my pleasure. I appreciate all my Canadian sisters and brothers out there, and I hope to see you again and talk with y'all later.
Douglas,
have a great
thank you
weekend.
so much. You too.
Thank you. All right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Hey, this is Richard Serrett. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.